Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning, Democratic political strategist BJ McCollister and conservative radio talk show host Ray Richardson. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, everyone.
Thanks for being here. Of course, Election Day, a lot to talk about this week, but we'll get to Austin Theriault's win in the CD2 in the next hour. In CD1, Ronald Russell beat out Andrew Piantadosi with 57% of voters supporting his run to unseat Representative Shelley Pingree in November. Russell is new to politics. He spent 30 years in the Army and 15 years as a business owner. He says he would cut red tape for small businesses and try to lower taxes, but he admits he still wants to learn more about what really matters to voters.
As I've said before, the title of the job is representative. That's representative for all of the constituents in Congressional District 1. So I need to know how they all feel, and I want to go out and find that out.
Ray, Russell went for those real staunch Republican voters, where Piantadosi tried to find the more moderate Republicans. The strategy obviously paid off for him.
Yeah, I think Republicans in the state of Maine were very fortunate to have two very principled guys in the 1st District. It was a real choice. The Colonel is a very measured man. I've gotten to know him over the last 4 months. When you talk to him, he thinks about what he says before he says it. I think that appeals to a lot of people, particularly in this very hot political environment we're in, where a lot of times people shoot first and aim second. Colonel doesn't do that. I think people respect him. He's a Green Beret, and we all admire military service in this state. It's a tough race. We all know that. Shelley's been there since January of 2009, I think. But if somebody on the Republican side is going to win this race, it's going to be somebody like the Colonel, where he has a background that we can respect, and he has a very measured, disciplined way about him. And Andrew's a great guy. I've gotten to know him over the last year, and I think he has a bright future in politics. But Ron took a different approach, and he won.
Yeah, and that approach, BJ, we talked about it with the analysts on election night, was the Trump factor at play here. It obviously played out in CD2. We can talk about that more later, but obviously played out in CD1 as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the voters that he is appealing to in a Republican primary look very different from the general election voters in the 1st Congressional District. As Ray mentioned, Congressman Shelley Pingree has been tremendously popular and has won this seat handedly time and time again. She's faced challengers of all types and all stripes, including independent challengers, and has been able to pull out victory. And I think the same thing will happen in November. I would note that it's encouraging to hear him talk about wanting to hear from what the citizens of District 1 want, but I think what he's going to find is that they want things that line up very differently from his value system, like protecting reproductive rights.
But outside of the Portland area, Ray, there is the taste for a Republican.
Well, there is, and again, we're in June, not November by any stretch of the imagination, but Newsweek put out a poll yesterday showing Donald Trump at 41% and Joe Biden at 40%. I don't think a year ago anybody thought Donald Trump leading in any poll statewide would be possible. Now, I'm not saying Trump's going to win the state, but I'm saying that there is a hunger for change going on. And one of the appeals about Ron Russell is you just like the guy when you meet him. He's a very likable man.
All right, we'll see how that plays out in November. Also, this election day, the GOP was out collecting signatures at the polls for referendum issues, including voter ID and repealing the national popular vote law. The latter passed in Augusta, you might remember, last session, and Governor Mills allowed it to become law without her signature. BJ, will they be successful here?
I don't think so. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. Voter ID continues to pop up, and they do not successfully collect the signatures. And on the people's veto, they have an even bigger hill to climb because they only have a 90-day window to collect the necessary number of signatures. So I don't think either of these qualify for the ballot.
Right?
I mean, they're a tough road, there's no doubt. And it should be. If we're going to veto something the legislature and the governor did, it should be a very tough hill to climb. I don't know whether they'll do it or not. On Friday on my show, Barbara Bagshaw, the rep out of Wyndham, coordinated 10 locations. We kept announcing them on the air that you could just stop there and sign. And they collected a lot of signatures by the time I left the airwaves on 10. We'll see. It's a big mountain to climb. There's no doubt about it. But if they climb it, I think the people of Maine are against the national popular vote. We'll see on photo ID.
Yeah, I mean, I would just also add that, look, it's somewhat ironic that these two initiatives are being circulated at the same time. One is about protecting the idea of one person, one vote, and the other one is trying to overturn a law that is settled on one person, one vote in a presidential election.
In national politics, for the first time in American history, the child of a sitting president has been convicted of a federal crime. A jury found Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 of the felony gun charges against him, stemming from his purchase and possession of a gun while using narcotics back in 2018. Prosecutors argued Hunter knowingly lied on a federal form by checking a box claiming he was not an active drug user when he bought that gun.
No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant. It was these choices and the combination of guns and drugs that made his conduct dangerous.
Now, 2 of the counts he was convicted of carry maximum prison sentences of 10 years. Ray, there's reporting here that the Trump campaign was hoping he would be acquitted here to basically campaign on it, raise money on it. Does this throw a wrench into his plan that the justice system is somehow rigged?
I don't think so. I mean, since Trump got convicted, he's raised $400 million and his poll numbers have gone up. I know people may be shocked about this. I'm a conservative on a talk show for almost 21 years. I haven't talked about Hunter since he got convicted. I don't think anybody actually cares. I think people cared more about the sweetheart deal that he was given, exonerating in the future that the judge threw out, but I don't think anybody cares. I don't care. It's a distraction, really. I mean, it's the president's son. And I know the president said that he won't pardon him. Okay, fine. But I think the president should commute his sentence if he goes to jail. We do not need the son of a president in a United States prison. I know people will disagree with that, but if I were president and it was my boy or my daughter, I have 4 kids, I would absolutely commute their sentence.
BJ.
Well, I agree with Ray on a lot of this. I do think it's not a real factor. And I think on the contrast, you have one presidential candidate, the president, Joe Biden, who has a son who's just been convicted. And on the other side of the ticket, you have a presidential candidate who he himself has been convicted. And so to me, that is the true story here, is the fact that some Republicans are wanting to make hay about this decision, but don't want to acknowledge the legitimacy of the Trump conviction.
Well, I think that one's going to be overturned on appeal, so I'm not really worried about it. It was much like the eligibility case. I had no doubt Supreme Court would vote 9-0. So I don't sweat a lot of this stuff like a lot of people do. I figure cooler heads will prevail once cooler heads get in the room, and I think the appeals court will overturn Trump's conviction as well. Putting Stormy Daniels on the stand and with no probative value, she hadn't talked to him since 2010. If there was a crime, it happened in 2016. I think Judge Merchan really did a very poor job, but we'll see.
All right, BJ, Ray, thanks so much. We're going to take a quick break. The Weekend Morning Report is back right after this. Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Blanchard, and this is Political Brew. Joining me this morning, Democratic political strategist B.J. McCollister and conservative radio talk show host Ray Richardson. Good morning to you both.
Good to see you both. First,
a big win for Austin Theriault in the 2nd District Republican primary. Theriault with 67% of the vote to Sobolewski's 33%. Theriault, a state lawmaker and NASCAR driver from the county, has the backing of former President Donald Trump and the National Party. With all that money, he is hoping to take out Democratic incumbent Jared Golden.
Jared Golden is a nice guy. I would love to have a beer with him, but he has failed the 2nd District from a multitude of standpoints. He's not showing us leadership in the areas that we need strong leadership in.
BJ, is that true?
It's true that he's a nice guy and somebody who'd be good to have a beer with, but I do think he's yeah, exactly. But I do think that obviously Theriault has to make these arguments, but they're just not super legitimate with somebody like Jared Golden, who has traditionally taken on his own party and it created frustration within his own party because of that. And I think that he does that because he is so clearly aligned with the voters in his district and puts that ahead of party. And so I just don't think it's a legitimate attack.
Ray, a really obvious factor here is age. Republicans obviously not wanting to put someone older against Golden. Will that help or hurt here?
You know, I think Austin has a really good shot at taking this seat, and a number of national rating, that rate seats around the country have now put this in lean Republican, which is surprising. On the other hand, Donald Trump is running 15, 17 points ahead, again in June, not November, but in that district from polls that I've seen. The difference between Sobolewski and Austin Theriault, Austin's a young guy. he called me before he actually announced and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think the fact that you're a NASCAR driver, that's big up in CD2. People will connect with that immediately." Mike Sobolewski, again, we had two good guys running, but I think Austin was able to raise a lot of money. He got the Trump endorsement. That matters up there. I think it's going to be a really great race. And if Donald Trump wins big up there, I believe Austin's going to win this race. I think Jared, he's right. He's a great guy. I don't know him that well. I knew him as in the legislature, and he came to my lobster rally 2 years ago. And he does think out of the box, but he's still a Democrat at heart, and a lot of the values up there just don't play.
But not all Republicans are happy about Theriault's win. State Representative John Andrews announced he is resigning from office because Theriault secured the nomination. In a Facebook post, Andrew, who represented the town of Paris, said, quote, "I've just resigned my seat in the Maine State House of Representatives. I can't be a part of anything that supports Austin Theriault. Paris voted for Theriault. That made up my mind. I'm sorry, but I'm done standing up for anything in this community. I'm officially retired from politics. This absolutely disgusts me." Ray, what gives here?
I'm going to make friends, a lot of them right now. It disgusts me too that he resigned. I live in Westbrook. I love Westbrook. We raised our kids there. They went through the school system. Do they do stuff that drives me crazy? You bet they do. But if I was I was president of the chamber for a long time, would I resign over it? Absolutely not. If I was their representative, John, you're a hothead, and you made a childish decision here. It was very immature, and Paris is better off that you're not there. That's
BJ.
my opinion.
Well, I find myself agreeing with Ray on a lot this morning. But what I would also say, though, is, in politics, we've all learned this. The way you lose is often as important, or maybe more important, than the way you win. And clearly, this is not a kind of response that is even a response you'd expect from somebody who holds public office. It's not appropriate. It's too bad that those voters won't have representation until the next election. But look, he wasn't even running for re-election. So this underscores the fact that this was a hot-headed move and a poor way to lose.
But what does this speak to? Was he trying to make the case that he's worried about the influence from the National Party and all the money at play? What's the issue?
Unfortunately, and we all know this, on both sides of the aisle, politics has become very cultish. And one of the hardest things, and you know this, you're involved, supporters, they take it a lot harder often than the candidates do when the candidates lose. Now, not always, but most of the candidates realize there's a bigger play at stake here. When I saw this, I was so disappointed. I don't really know him, but I just felt like, he's acting like a seventh grader who somebody took the starting quarterback position from him, so he walked off the team. I find it disgusting. I was embarrassed for him, not for me, but for him. And Paris is a good town, and you just condemned everyone in Paris. How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in the stories following up, I think his direct quote was, "Even my dog doesn't like me." So I think that's a pretty good wrap up on the situation.
We'll leave that there then.
And I do want to say this. I don't know him well. He seems like a good person. I think he let his emotions really way overreact. And look, we all care about this. If we didn't, we wouldn't do it. But doggone it, you got to be a grown man.
All right. In the race for the White House, former President Donald Trump was back on Capitol Hill this week for the first time since the January 6 riots.
But we have to get elected. We have to take this beautiful place.
Trump met with congressional Republicans behind closed doors at the private Capitol Hill Club, just blocks from the Capitol itself. The meeting was meant to get the party on the same page for its campaign messaging and legislative strategy in 2025. BJ, was this just a show of strength here?
Well, I mean, look, he was just doing exactly what he's been doing on Truth Social, just in person, telling congressional Republicans how to run the congressional branch. But what I will say is it's fascinating to me to watch many of these people wrap their arms around the president, or the former president, when on January 6th, they were calling him, begging him to call the National Guard, and he refused to. These folks were scared for their lives when the rioters came in, and the president wasn't willing to help them then, and now he's looking to them to help him now. So, right?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth that's come out about January 6th. It was a stain on our country, and people that did it should go to jail. but there's a lot of truth about January 6th that has come out. Recently, Nancy Pelosi was caught on camera admitting that she didn't have the National Guard there. But as far as the Republicans go, Trump doesn't actually need them. It's good to have them. As I said the day he got convicted in court, the real verdict will be November 5th. I think what he's trying to do is to rally support, hopefully win the House and the Senate, and then accomplish the goals that he's stated. It was funny watching him and Mitch McConnell shake hands. I'm not a McConnell fan, and it was funny watching Mitch kiss the ring. It really was, because he's an old war horse. I guess he just decided that was the greater good, but it was really odd.
Yeah, and I mean, let's remember, Trump has said that if he's reelected, he will pardon the January 6 rioters. And so I think it's an important contrast for voters to consider this November.
So I will say this, and I say this to a lot of people on both sides. I take Trump seriously, but I don't take him literally. I don't hang on his every word. And maybe he will, maybe he won't. We'll see. I know there are people that I personally know that have been convicted and are going to jail that are praying he pardons them. But whether he actually will or not, I don't know. I take him seriously, but I don't take him literally.
We'll see. And finally, the Supreme Court this week weighing in on some big cases, striking down a ban on bump stocks, but protecting access to abortion medication. Ray, what's your reaction here?
Not surprising on the abortion pill. Griswold versus Connecticut, I think 68, pretty much settled this issue. It was a 9-0 decision, not surprising. They overturned a Trump-era policy on the bump stocks, but the court came out and said the bump stock does not create a machine gun. And if it doesn't, well, then it shouldn't be banned.
BJ, are you surprised by either of these rulings?
Well, I think the abortion pill ruling was a welcome win from this court that has continually attacked reproductive rights. And on the bump stock decision, that's not as shocking. But I think one thing that is made clear from that decision is that there needs to be legislative action to address this policy, and that a president can't just do it with the stroke of a pen.
All right, let's wrap things up with winners, losers. Ray, you're first.
No losers. But I will say Friday was Flag Day. I cherish that flag. I have a beautiful official flag hanging in my studio, which has been there for almost 21 years. I think the flag symbolizes hope and freedom around the world to people that are oppressed. So winners are, we have a flag that is a symbol of hope and freedom around the world.
BJ.
Winners of the week have to be the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to you, Dad. And the loser of the week has to be the congressional Republicans that welcome Trump with open arms, even though he hasn't been as supportive of them as they are of him.
BJ McCollister, Ray Richardson, thanks so much for being with us this week. That's going to do it for this week's Political Brew. Remember, you can catch Political Brew anytime on News Center Maine. Plus, the Morning Report is back right after this.